Hello, I'm gonna make a quick video about my concept art painting video. I got a comment from Musa Ihiga that were asking, he wanted a tutorial would be highly appreciated. Sorry, I don't have the time to make a complete tutorial, so I'm gonna try and keep this under 30 minutes. But he posted a link to this short video, Meet Buck, which is I guess it's students who made it, but he want to achieve some this kind of style, which I call this like stylized. I think that's a common concept. So I'm just going to show you really quickly how to go about to create something like this. So it has this like really painterly feeling. Because I've been dabbling around with this, I'm trying to make a workflow. So after I set my workflow for pixel art, I started to explore a way to make a good workflow for this stylized look. So I actually made this a while ago. It was supposed to be game assets, so I had it both in Unity and Unreal, but I kind of abandoned it. But this was in the process where I like really thought about this stylized look, and I followed a tutorial by XRG, I think his name is. He's on YouTube. He has this like hand painted tutorials, but I kind of quickly realized I'm not gonna really move into that area just yet. I have to set my workflow. So anyway, to achieve something like this, I think you have to really think about the look, and that's when I found this from Valve. I think you can find it if you just search for Valve's Dota style guides. You're gonna click around. Come on, it used to be a PDF. They have since moved it. Okay, that was not the... So if you go to their workshop, there's a character art guide, and this one used to be a PDF, but now it's online. So they explain like how they work when they create their characters and stuff. So you kind of start with some silhouette just to get a look, I guess. But this part is really important, or I found really important for me. Value gradients. So you're gonna move from like darker to brighter from the ground up. So I guess that's to like have focus on what's important in the character. So like the legs are not that super important. It's at least not in a game like this where you are looking top down. And that could be you could have the same argument for a movie because it's, or animatics, because you are kind of looking through a camera. So, and you can probably see it here that everything in the lower parts is darker, and as you move up to the character you get a brighter values, so to get better focus on the faces and the hands and stuff like that. The next important thing is value patterning, where you actually fill in with a gray scale gradient, gray values. So you like fill in the parts that's more important. And as you can see, it's the same general idea, like the heads and the hands are a bit brighter, and the stuff that's not that super important is less brighter. And they go on and talk about color and saturation and like color schemes, I guess. Yeah, color schemes and contemporary colors and stuff like that. I guess this is more, you can take this as you want, but I guess this part, or at least I found this part, gradients and the patterning is more important. So I recommend that you read this if you want to make something stylized. I haven't really yet set my workflow, so it's going to be a bit improvised. When I did this, I kind of used it. As you can see, the trees are more darker at the bottom and brighter at the top, but it, yeah, as I said, I haven't really set it right at the moment. So yeah, stylized art. It's generally called also NPR, non-photorealistic rendering, I guess, or just non-photorealistic. But what I want to explore is to mix the stylized or NPR look with a PBR workflow. So every material and stuff you create, it's actually physically based. And yeah, check out the internal style guides of Valve. I guess you can find some similar style guides from other companies or like artists, but the one from Valve was the first one I found out and like really read through and took to heart. And I guess this is just some side notes I made. I guess I'm gonna stumble upon that there's a need in Blender for multi-channel painting, and I can explain that later. So yeah, if you take a look at the video again, we could try to recreate something, or just make a test. So I don't want to spend that time much modeling. I have some assets. I could actually use this guy and paint him again, which I probably will. So I'm just gonna link in that guy. Object, no materials, no object, sorry. Not armature, I don't really need armature yet. But I got it anyway, it seems. Yeah. So yeah, I turned on screen caps. I don't know if you really need it. So yeah, let's start making a material for this guy. So you can see I have only a diffuse and oh, I got the textures also, so I'm gonna have to redo that. But as I said, I want to explore to have a stylized look, but with a PBR shader workflow. So I'm gonna add my own ones, or I could use the Unreal 4. I guess mine is pretty basic to the Unreal. I got a little bit more inputs. So I got roughness, specular, metallic, but that's the same in UE4. I got ambient occlusion, and this is one thing I really like to have, like a normal map input. That's where you can just plug in a normal map and it works, instead of adding a vector normal map, I guess. Yeah. So instead of plugging in a normal map here and plugging it in there, I can just plug in the normal map straight here and change the strength. And I have energy at my MISO color. So I'm gonna use my PBR like default shader instead of UE's default shader, but the principles are the same, and it should work in Unreal 4 also if you want to do that. I'm just gonna use it because mine is a bit easier than this one I have downloaded from BlendSwap. But I looked at the nodes and learned a lot from that one, so if you haven't done it, I can highly recommend it. let's plug that. So I really want to kind of save workspace. So let's change the image editor. Let's make a new image. My habit is to make something really completely gray, and let's call this color. And let's connect it here. No, not image sequence. Texture, image, texture. So what I'm gonna do is start with the basic color. Yet again, if we look at the style guides, this would be probably this section where they're talking about the color schemes and complementary colors. So yeah, well, let's change this to color. So now he's completely gray. Let's go into texture paint mode. I'm gonna change my brush to like a fill one, and I'm gonna test to get some color I want. Why isn't it? Why can't I paint him? Okay, yeah, I had this selected, face selection. That's why you kind of saw faces. So with that enabled, you can just paint only on those faces, and I had none selected. That's why I couldn't paint. So I'm gonna go into texture paint mode and make sure that's not selected. So this is the step where you basically put the color, and it's the way I want to work is that it's like more non-destructive. So it's better to have tons and tons of texture in Blender when you're making your artwork. And basically what I'm thinking of is using the render bakes. So here you can just bake everything once you are done, or you could actually do it in the node compositor also, like collect all the textures you're using and merge them. So I'm just gonna type a little bit of a list here what we need. We kind of need a color, we need a value gradient, and we need value patterns. On top of that, I'm thinking like anything that's gonna darken the model or the textures should be on a separate nodes, and the reverse also is true. Anything that's gonna like brighten, any details that's gonna be brighten, it's also gonna be a separate texture. And all these could be like multitudes of textures that you kind of combine. So yeah, I can show that also. So we need something that's darken and something that's lighten. Let's check if they actually have any more patterning and gradients. I don't think we need anything more to achieve something like this. Let's find a better frame. This is perfect. Here you can see how it's darker in the bottom and brighter at the top. Oh shit, I'm gonna close this project because otherwise I'm always gonna tab into that one. So let's say if you want to paint this, I'm gonna change to one of my other brushes. Is it this one? Yeah. So I'm gonna keep on painting with this one. So if you want to be able to change the base color, you shouldn't like paint on it like this, because then you realize, oh shit, I want another color for the base color. So then if we're gonna go and fill in with the like a darker brown, all that painting you did on this texture slot's gonna be erased. So what is probably a good workflow is just to make another color texture. So I'm just gonna name this color 2. You can't see it here because it's not really used, but we could always load it in here. And this is the node wrangler. When I do like this, hold Alt and right click, so it goes in mix. That's actually not what we want. We would like this one to be transparent, and this to be a mix with a factor of its alpha, like that. So now if I paint on this color 2, like it could be, you could name it better, like color details or something. So yeah, this is also one of my menus to jump between layers, but you always have them here. To better see which texture slot you're painting in, change from material to texture. So now I'm in color and color 2. Oh crap, I shouldn't have done that. I was in fill mode. I want to get back to my paintbrush. So yeah, let's paint some details. Change back to material, and here you can see the effect. So now if you realize like, well, holy shit, the base color is all wrong, this is not going to work with my look, you can always go back to your base color and fill it with another color that you like, and your details is going to be saved, because this is supposedly how I'm going to work with like tons and tons of textures for each detail, or this like this base setup with value gradient and value pattern gradient. So that's what I was thinking in like a previous video. So like if we had layers in Blender in the image editor, I would like them to be like everything else in Blender, represented with nodes. So this was supposed to be layer 1 and this is layer 2, and you can change how the mix, and you can everything is like non-destructive. You can also always use like, you can use this alpha to affect something else, and that's where multi-channel painting comes into comes into mind. If you want to paint something, let's say these strokes I made, I want them to be affecting the specular. You could always like take this alpha and mix it with everything else you've done for the speculars or roughness. So yeah, that was maybe a bit off topic, but the more you work like this, the more you're gonna realize that it's gonna be kind of horrible to do stuff if you're working destructively, and you can never like, you paint the color here, but oh shit, that color should have been like more glossy, or like less roughness, and then you have to paint that yet again, and you can never get the exact one. But if you work like this, you can always use this alpha, which is exactly the thing you painted. So I'm gonna erase the thing I did here. Oh, I'm not in paint mode. Paint mode. Okay, like that. So now erase that. Let's set up the basics first, like with the gradient and the pattern. So let's make a new one. Let's make this completely white, since we're going to multiply it, and let's call it value gradient. I'm just going to call it value grad. So the way this is going to affect everything is we're going to put it here. We should actually probably also make a frame. So we can collect everything. We could actually collect all the colors in a frame also. I'm gonna do that. So let's take these three, put them in the frame. I'm gonna go in full screen so it's easier to see. Let's call this frame color and this frame values. So what's gonna happen is we're gonna go from the color and we're gonna have to mix them with our values. Let's change this to multiply and with a factor of 1. This one we could rename to gradient. So why did it? I guess why we're seeing this is some kind of bug, because I just erased everything. Let's check. Let's do it like this. Yeah, now it refreshed and removed that. But it got really dark. Oh yeah, sorry. This is still reading color 2. We should read value gradient like that. So let's go and paint in our value gradient. I'm gonna look at the model straight in front, because if you look at this yet again, darker hair, brighter at the top. So this is his feet and this is the face. And let's change brush to gradient. All these brushes I made myself, but you can easily make them. So there is a ramp brush in Blender, but yeah, you just have to like save it. I actually kind of forgot where you made it a gradient. Yeah, you use gradient probably. Yep. So if you check that one, you get a gradient. So let's draw from the bottom up. Okay, that kind of looks good. It's way too much now, but never mind. We can, as I said, this is a non-destructive workflow. We can always go back and redo stuff. So let's check the texture. It looks good. And now, because we're multiplying it here, we can always, like, we can have nothing. We can have a little. We can have fully. But let's set it to 0.4 or 0.5 maybe, so we actually see it a bit more. Let's go to the next step, which is a value pattern. If we check this one out, that's where we kind of choose what's important and fill it in. But this model is kind of simple. We don't really have like weapons or items or clothing or anything like that, so we're just gonna imagine stuff. But as you see, we kind of have to fill in what's important with like brighter values. So let's work from like completely white to not completely white, because that's not going to show up, but a bit of a bright gray to a dark gray. So let's make that texture slot. Let's call it value pattern. Yet again, this one is going to be white, because we're going to multiply. Let's go to a node compositing, and let's duplicate this one and change to value pattern, and it's going to basically be the same. We're going to multiply with the result of that. Let's have a factor of 1 so we can see it, and then we can tune it down, and let's call it pattern. So now you start to see, like, if you continue doing this, you can always have your colors here and you can go back and fix them. And as you work along, what I notice, once you set the values, you're pretty much done with those. You don't really go and fix this unless you add stuff to your model. If I add like something to him, a piece of clothing or something, then I probably gonna have to redo this, so or like update it. But once it's once your modeling is done and you start painting, and once this is done, you're gonna spend more time here actually. So, and it's completely white. Did I not set that to... Yeah, it's on mix. It should be on multiply. So let's imagine we have... we want to fill, and now we want this one actually. So just for like... I could either like click like this. It's gonna take a while. So I'm gonna go into edit mode instead and select his hands, and tab back to texture paint. We are in fill. We want to be in just in values. So let's say 0.8. Pretty bright. What happened now? Okay, now I click there, so it should be a bit brighter. Maybe it was too little, because I can't really see. It's gonna... What? Why can't it... Why can't I paint on these faces? Oh shit, yeah. I think I was in erase mode since before. Okay, so let's go back to mix. Let's paint totally white. Paint. Nothing is happening. That's... The colors are still correct, but the value pattern... Okay, now it painted for some reason. Ah. Okay, this is kinda annoying. Ah, it's the face thing again. Crap. So let's... Okay, now everything is white. And now actually I can go back to material and also select the stuff I want to value pattern. So let's brighten the hands. Variant fill. Or yeah, should actually put like a base color on everything. But yeah, let's do that, because otherwise everything is like white now. We don't really want that. So back to material, make sure we paint on everything and get a really base gray. And actually I think that was a bit too much because everything is too dark. I'm not gonna... I know, but let's keep it at that. It's easy to remember that everything is painted in like base gray. So now let's make the hands a bit brighter because they're more important. So I select them in edit mode. I go back to texture paint, enable this one, and let's change the color to... I'm gonna go like this with the value, so I can really put like values I want, 0.8, and go back to... Whoa, crap. So now you can see the effect. but it's really prominent, or like really showing up. But we could always tune it down like this, but let's keep it like this so we can see it. And now let's say that like the head is also something we want. I'm gonna deselect the hands, select the head, back to texture paint, and let's select the color. Let's say the head is less important than the hand, so we're gonna choose 0.7 and paint that. And let's say like this stomach is kind of important, so I'm gonna select those faces. You don't really have to select faces. I'm just imagining that I have stuff like this, like objects. You could actually paint the value pattern, but for speed's sake, and I guess this is kind of nice actually to like select the faces and paint them. So let's set a color that's a bit less important than the head, 0.6. And let's say that the tail is equally important, so I'm gonna select these faces. Clickety-clack. Okay, I got them selected and I paint them. So far I've been above 0.5, so everything I consider all these things important. Let's say like the feet are less important. If I go into edit, select more. Okay. So let's say that the feet are less important than all the other stuff we painted. So go into texture paint and choose a color. Our base value is 0.5, so I'm gonna go a bit below 0.4 and fill them in. Okay, that's it for the value pattern. We're gonna go out of that mode. So if we turn it down to 0, we can turn this down to 0 also, so we can turn this a bit up until something we like, maybe like that. It looks really weird, but and with the value gradient we're kinda done. So yeah, just quickly for this one, I'm not gonna go totally in depth for the dark and light. I'm just gonna do the dark and the light, and it's exactly the same. But instead of like multiplying, we're gonna use screen or something to mix them. So let's make another texture called darken, and since it's gonna be multiply, we're gonna have a white one also. And now we're gonna have to mix them in. So I'm gonna make a frame called, can go into this light and no, let's call it details. It's gonna copy, crap, yeah. Maybe if I Control C, Control V, no. Okay, it really doesn't want to, so I'm gonna add it here. Texture, image texture. Let's call it darken. We're gonna use our darken. And pretty much the same, we're gonna mix it with that one. Choose a multiply and factor of 1 so we can really see it. Let's paint that slot. Where is slots? Layers. No, sorry, not layers. Where's the slot? Oh yeah, I probably have to be in texture paint, then it turns up. And I'm probably gonna pin it down so I can always see it. Yeah, we're in darken. So for this I'm gonna use my detailed brush, which is kinda just a tiny brush. I'm gonna use completely black or slightly off. And now I can paint details. So I guess what you're gonna do like this is, maybe I should I don't remember what I had in this guy. Oh yeah, he has like a kind of brighter belly and hand palms and his eyes. Let's make the eyes. Holy crap. Sometimes you're really zoomed in Blender. So I'm just gonna this is not gonna be as beautiful as the other one, but as you can see, you can kind of, let's make him like some kind of stitchy made up doll or something. Kind of looks horrible, but that's out of the point. No, his mouth is here, but his actual mouth is here. There actually. You can see these are his teeth. Oh nice, I took them all on the same UVs. So as I said, this is gonna be totally non-destructive. You can always go in here, or I should maybe be in both views. So you can what? Darken. Oh yeah, sorry. We should do it, mix them like that. So you can always like go and make it less influence. And you go about with the same, I can show how you make lighten. You make something, a new texture, it's gonna be completely black. Let's call it lighten. Let's add it in here. Mix it with that. Whoa, what happened? I want to mix with that one. Is this kind of bug? Let's go and clean this up a bit. So it's not going to be mixed. We can use screen, factor of 1, and use lighten and call this lighten. At the moment I'm just having like one texture for each of these. You could make this with like 10 or 20 different kind of lighten or darken details textures. The same goes for maybe not the pattern and the gradient, those are always going to be one texture, but like with colors you can add hundreds of textures to make up your color, and then you can always go back to the base color and fix it. And if you do some color detail that you don't like, you can go back and fix it and change its influence. But when you're gonna go out from Blender, if this were to be a game asset, you would have to bake everything down. You have to bake all your colors into one color texture, and you had to like mix all your values and add it to your colors also, because this workflow is not actually how you do it in Unreal and stuff like that. You want like I can check my material here. So you want like everything to be in the color, and then you're probably gonna have a roughness and a specular, but those are outside of this scope. This is just to make the color of your character. So you can either bake it in Blender, I'm gonna check that out later, or you can add it in Photoshop, or you can add it in Blender Compositor. Just bake all this together. Because what is happening is I'm just using multiply and screen, and at this end, this one is the final. Could probably do something like if yeah, you don't have it in here, but if you, okay, that's kind of bad actually, because if you were in this one, you could always do output, a file output, but you can't do it in here in the material, and that's explanatory, because then it would output a file all the time. So that's why you probably need to use bake, and probably just bake the diffuse. But anyway, let's go back to lighten. So yeah, everything is set up. I'm just not painted on it. So let's be on the Oh, what happened to one of his mouths? Oh. I'm gonna go back and paint this while I can. Whip. And let's go back to light then, and change color to something more bright. And now you could do like highlights. If you had more details, you could like paint those in. And if you want to make something more darken, you can go back to darken. So yeah, but that's more in this style where you kind of paint in the highlights. If we go back to the example of this movie, they don't really use that. Yeah, you can see here. So probably all these strokes you put in the lighten, and all these detail strokes you put in the darken. And like this gradient, you're gonna have to paint it. I can paint it in this guy. So that should probably be in the color. Well, where did crap? This one is really weird. I wish it was like connected if I select this node, because that's how baking works in Blender. You have to select the texture node in like a node editor, and then you bake to that texture. I wish when you selected these nodes it would actually update it here, but it doesn't. Somehow how I got it to work here. Yeah, because this list is actually does this. So yeah, let's go to color. I'm gonna change my brush to something I have, and let's maybe go to, oh yeah, so this is also a problem. If I go into texture, it's gonna take all this node tree, and that's why everything is probably white, because there's so many blend modes. So I have to be in material. That was a bit of a bummer. Has it always been like this? I'm pretty sure I've been able to. Okay, darken works. Now I only see the darken, only the lighten, the color. Ah yeah, my color is it's an alpha channel. That's why it's all white. So yeah, that was a bit bummer. Well, anyways, I could probably go in here and sample this color and go back to color 2. Let's make a bit brighter. So let's say he has some kind of orange shirt. Oh, actually sample viewport, I guess. But as you can see, I'm painting over here, but my value gradients and my value patterns are still valid, so that's kinda neat. Yeah, I really don't want to paint this guy, because I have no idea what I'm gonna paint him. Probably something like this, but I don't want to do it. It's gonna take too long. But I hope you get the the basic workflow so far. You can always explore this, and maybe you can change it. If you're gonna render like offline render in Blender, I would suggest you use passes and that you use indirect color. I can just show you what's happening otherwise. If I add a camera here, move it back a bit, and let's change this to a 3D view and look from the camera. Look at our ugly bear. Anyway, if I render this one, it's gonna be pretty dark, I guess. No, because I have bright world color. And I don't know why this is. Do we have a modifier on him? It's just the armature. Why is it? Oh yeah, it's probably the world thing. I'm just gonna make the world a bit darker, because what we see is the Fresnel effect, or Fresnel. I'm gonna call it Fresnel. No, Fresnel. Everybody says Fresnel. So the roughness, this guy is probably yeah, roughness of 1. Specular should be less actually. So yeah, if I render this guy, it kind of depends. If you want this look like in the film, they probably have I'm just guessing here, but maybe the lights is not painted. They actually use, I would actually use like real light in cycles. To you can always paint what's like this a bit brighter and this a bit darker, but then you want to mix in real light sources, so you get a lot of cool effects that would be horrible to paint. And then you go this route where you probably set up your scene with like a lamp. Look at him now. Then you see the effect that the light sources affect the coloring, so you don't have to paint it in. You get it for free, and that's the good thing with PBR. This guy could be in like a dark scene, like in this movie. I guess they're in a tunnel further on. Yeah, so you're gonna get all these like these lights for free when you do the rendering. But if you don't want that, if you want to really go for a stylized look, you can turn on passes and use diffuse. So I'm gonna render this guy once again. Probably had it in the buffer, but so let's go into Compositor and check that out. Use node backdrop, and it's always too small, and I don't know why, but I don't get the input. So back in the days you always had like the input. Where is it? Render layers, and the output. Probably need a composite, but let's get a viewer. It's always too small. Where's the zoom? So if you don't see anything, check the zoom over there. Okay, so this is the style that's more like this, where it's rendered. But there's other popular way to do this is like just to use the stuff you painted. So if we check our diffuse color, I'm gonna duplicate that one. So that's just everything I painted. So if you paint all your shadows and stuff like that into the character, you can render and use just the color. But actually I prefer this more, because you get so much for free. And if you're gonna make something animated where you have light sources, it could be really cool. As you see this, how it brightens up this line, but it gets darker here and stuff like that. So, and actually, I don't know what they used to make this one, but there's this scene with the carrots and stuff. You can really see the Fresnel effect on the carrots. That one, or the sheen, it's really like exaggerated. So yeah, it's you could go with buy it like this and just paint. Spend time painting your character. So yeah, that's probably how I would do it, and how I am going to do it. But at the moment I'm more looking into PBR with a realistic, with more photorealism. But yeah, it's totally doable to do everything in Blender with cycles and some kind of workflow similar to this, and render it in cycle with like a photo PBR photo, physically based rendering, so you can tweak everything how you want, but paint everything like it's hand painted, and not like photo scans or mega scans or something like that. Yep. Now I'm gonna make a video about 2.8, so bye.